My name is Athena, and in this video I'm bringing you part 2 of my June wrap-up. So in this video I'm going to talk about the rest of the books that I read in June. It's currently the beginning of July. I'm filming this video just after I filmed the previous one, but I did change my shirt because I thought that would be nicer. So I'm going to talk about 6 books in this video, and let's just get started. I'm always talking about them in the order I finish them. Timestamps will be in the description down below, as usual, etc. So the first book that I read after the last book. So the last book that I talked about in the previous video is The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. I absolutely love this book. This was a favorite of the month. And so after that, I struggled a bit with what to read next, because that book was so good that things seemed to kind of pale in comparison. I tried to read a couple of books, like read a chapter or two, then I couldn't get into it. So yeah, I did read stuff eventually, but it gave me a bit of a book hangover, as I think the term is. Like, you read a really good book and then you're just kind of a bit lost what to read afterwards, if that makes sense. Anyway, I don't drink alcohol, so I've never actually had a alcohol in. But it put me in a little bit of a slump because I loved that book so much and I kind of just wanted more of that. So anyway, so the next book I read then is the Magische Halsband, book 1 in the Avonturen van Rutger, Thomas en Paco by Rutger, Vink, Thomas van Grinsven, Paco de Hond, illustrations by Sabine van the Stadt, and Meij wrote some of the text as well. This was also a book that I was highly anticipating. This was made by 2 YouTubers that I watch. They're Dutch. They are a gay couple living together. They have a dog. And they wrote a book together with the people I just mentioned. So we have Rutger and Thomas and their dog Paco, who is very cute. And so here is actually, I hope I can show that, the actual saying based on our lives, and then their channels and stuff. They're also on Instagram. And yeah, this is a children's book. It's the title means the magical color, so this this actually won a prize from the Kinderjury. So that's it's this yearly event where books for children and young adults. So there's different age categories, and in each age category, kids get to vote for their favorite book out of the books that have been released in like the past year, something like that. I've seen like adverts for this, but I wasn't sure if I would be allowed to vote since I'm not a kid. So I haven't actually looked into that, but I remember as a kid as well seeing that around a lot and everything. So that anyway, I'm very happy for them that their book won. And I mean, I love this. So I think it will be most fun if you are already familiar with the people, although you can perfectly, I think, read it without knowing them. But if you do know them, you notice some like little in jokes and things that you recognize and stuff like that. Here are some of the pages. You can see it's very colorful with the illustrations. Well, that's just a few pages. I really enjoyed this, and that's just at the beginning, I think. But yeah, the book begins with that the 3 of them get sent a package, a box with gifts for Paco, the dog. But then some strange things happen from the moment that they open the box. And yeah, I mean, it's a book for children, so I saw some things coming, but because I'm an adult. But some things also definitely not. And yeah, I really enjoyed this, and also seeing illustrations of all their dogs. You also see some of their friends. You see in the book they are there as well as like characters, and also their dog friends, if that makes sense. Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and yeah. And definitely one of their aims was also to show that a children's book in this book, it's just normal to have a gay couple, a male, living together. And so, because we don't actually have many children's books in the Netherlands in Dutch that have a situation like that. And anyway, yeah, I really like watching these YouTubers, and I really enjoyed this book. The next book I finished is Autisme en het voorspellende brein by Peter Vermeulen. This author is actually in at least the Netherlands and Belgium famous for some of the books on autism that he's written. I have some of them. It turns out I haven't read all of them, but I have some of his books that he wrote many years ago when I was a teenager. I'm being rambly today, sorry. So when I was a teenager and I started to I wasn't diagnosed yet, but my parents and I, we had a suspicion, and so as a teenager I wanted to learn more about autism because I did feel like that was me. So yeah, his books that were out at the time were some of the books that I don't know if I bought them or whether my parents bought them for me, but either way. So it's been a long time since I read those. Obviously he has written more in the meantime, but I haven't read some of those. Anyway, long story. My grandma wanted to this story is going all over the place. So my grandma gifted me her collection of Dutch book week books. So in the Netherlands we have what's called Book Week, and if you spend over a certain amount on Dutch books in a bookshop or an online shop, you get sent this Book Week book for free. There's a new one each year. I don't know if that counts for all shops, but most of them for sure. I don't know if Amazon does that, but well, a lot of bookshops. So I have her collection, which I'm very grateful for, and I look forward to read them. I would like to read them in order. So it was started in, I want to say 1930, but then during the World War II, some years obviously where they had to skip it because the Netherlands was occupied. Early this year it was Book Week again, and so my grandma wanted to asked me to pick a Dutch book so that I would get sent the Book Week book for free so that I could add that to the collection. I haven't read the Book Week book yet. Actually the camera is resting on that and a bunch of other books, so because I couldn't get the tripod set up properly. So anyway, so I can't actually show it to you, it's right there, but if I get it out then I might not get this angle on height again. So anyway, so I looked through my wish list and see what was a book that I definitely wanted to read and own, and what was also in stock, because I couldn't buy it through a seller or anything because then I wouldn't get the Book Week book. Anyway, so I picked this. This is a very new release by Peter Vermeulen. This was released in I think 2021. Yeah, so the original, the first edition was 2021. This is the second edition from January 2022. Peter Vermeulen is Belgian. This book is basically about a new theory on how the brain works, and he is looking at that in combination with how it would then work for autistic people. So it has to do with some recent insights into certain, so the title actually means Autism and the Predicting Brain. That's not really the, that sounds a bit, but so voorspellen is to predict. This was quite interesting and definitely food for thought, or maybe something to reread. But yeah, I really liked reading this. There are sometimes some bits in it. It talked about that more recent research as well, and at the back there is notes as well as references and stuff. And here's the synopsis, as always in Dutch. I don't know if any of his books have been translated. or not into English. But yeah, anyway, I really found this a very interesting read. I am autistic, for those who didn't know. I think I said that. I did get diagnosed when I was 17. Sorry, this video is all over the place. Apologies if this is your first one from me. This is what sometimes happens, but not always. So the next book I finished is Warbreaker by Berna and Sanderson. I buddy read this book together with Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures and Amy and Tara. There are two other people that I didn't know before we read this book. I'll try to leave all of the information down below. But yeah, Berna is doing this year. She wants to read some bigger books that she is then reading over the course of 2 months each. I need some water. Anyway, so Warbreaker is one of the books she picked, and she wanted to read this over the course of May and June. So I said I would read it with her, and Amy and Tara did as well. So this is a high fantasy book. For me, this was a reread. I read this once before, years ago, as we can tell by the fact that this copy is a little bit, it was already a bit like that after the first time I read it. Here is the synopsis. This was a joy to reread. I didn't remember much of it beforehand, which is really the best way to go into a reread for me, because then I get to discover it all over again and gradually remember it as I'm reading it. I really enjoyed the writing style. I mean, I've already read quite a few books by this author, so, and also still have some to read. The font is like kind of slightly on the more bigger side, so for me this was not a slow read, it was more of a fast read, but that's also because it's a reread. But we took our time with this book, which I liked. I appreciated that. So we Berna set out, like, it was usually I think about 50-ish pages of chapters to read per like half a week segment, if that makes sense. So we spent I think 6 weeks reading this book, and that worked pretty well for me. So if I had been reading this on my own, I'm sure I would have read it, because I just wanted to keep on reading sometimes because it was very good. But yeah, it was really nice to talk about this book with other people. Yeah, so I haven't said yet what it's about. So we kind of follow several characters. Most of this book is set in Hallanderen, and I do apologize if I'm saying any of these terms from the book incorrect. We have several main characters. So you have the country Hallanderen, and then we have the country Idris, the god king of Hallanderen. Basically, the king of Idris has promised one of his daughters to marry the god king of Hallanderen. Hallanderen is more the big, powerful country. Idris is kind of a smaller country. But then in the beginning of the book, the king unexpectedly sends his youngest daughter rather than the oldest daughter. We follow both the daughters. So the youngest daughter is called Siri, and she unexpectedly has to go there to marry the god king in like an attempt to prevent a war that's threatened to happen for several years, I think. Anyway, the other sister is Vivena, and she's worried about her sister because she's the one that's been trained all her life to eventually marry the god king, but then the king sends his youngest daughter instead. So she follows her sister to Hallanderen, and she goes through quite a character growth in this. So that's our Idrien characters. We also have Lightsong, who is from Hallanderen. He is what's called a returned, which is seen as a god. He has to live in this kind of like court of the gods. I'm sorry, it's kind of complicated. There's also magic in this world. It's called biochroma, and this is part of the larger Cosmere universe. And the first time I read this, I didn't know as much about it. I hadn't read as much of Brandon Sanderson's other Cosmere works, and now I have. So it was really nice to see those few little nods there, which I didn't pick up on as much the first time round. I really like the magic in this world and how it works. It's biochroma, also known as breath, and if you have a lot of it, you can sense things around you more intensely. You can see like the differences between very similar colors much more. And well, I'm not doing this book a very much justice we're talking about. I loved it. I mean, I knew that I would, since I loved it the first time around. So that's why I'm not counting this in my favorite books of this month. Although it was, but it's also a reread. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed reading this, and I'm really glad that I got to buddy read it. It was really nice to talk about this with the four. The next book that I finished is called Zoals, verwacht, loopt alles anders by Berthold Gunster. The title means as expected, everything happens differently. It's not, it doesn't sound as nice as it does in Dutch, but I'm trying. So this is a book that I have borrowed from my parents. So my dad was gifted this, he liked it, he talked to my mum about it, and my mum said that she didn't think that that was something she would like to read more about, but now I've read it, and I will give it back to them. I have read more older books by this author. He is the bedenker, like the person who came up with omdenken, which I found out actually also has on the website, there's a section in English. So if I remember, I will try to leave a link to that down below. It kind of means, it's a bit similar to the expression thinking out of the box, not quite, but like then you have an idea of what this is. Very, very briefly, but you might be able to read more on the website. So this has to do with problems, and well, the concept of omdenken is kind of to change a problem into an opportunity, kind of. Yeah, it's not easy for me to explain. Plus, I like the examples make sense, but I think I would still struggle to use the concept in like my own daily life. But anyway, so that's the concept of omdenken. So this is kind of the newest one in the series, in which he got some more insight into. So we have this is what one of the things he talks about, which I guess doesn't make much sense if you, but yeah, anyway. So yeah, this was non-fiction. So kind of between my parents, I feel like I fall a bit in the middle. I liked some parts. The examples make sense, what he's saying about it as well. Sometimes I felt a bit about some of the things and how he's written them. Anyway, I got to read this book for free because I borrowed it from my parents. So, I don't regret reading it. I don't know if I can apply it really to real life much, but I guess I appreciated what the book was trying to say. I don't know if any of the books have been translated, whether it's just like a page on the website. Yeah, this was nice. Then the second to last book that I finished, because I actually read some of these books at the same time, but anyway, is When I Was Invisible by Dorothy Koomson. This one was published originally in 2016. I have the 2017 paperback edition. This is contemporary fiction, but it has some thrillery elements. So recently, Dorothy Koomson has been writing more thrillers, which I haven't read yet, but I do have a lot of them. I have a lot of her books on my shelf. I have read several of her books before, so I've read, I think, 3 of her books, but there is no complete list of her books in this book. Not that there has to be. But I think I've read about 3 and a short story. Anyway, and I enjoyed all 3 of those, so I have more by her on my bookshelf. Her earlier works are more like kind of rom-com, contemporary fiction, and then her newer works are more thrillers. Anyway, so this one has a bit of both. This does discuss some hard-hitting topics, so definitely a few trigger warnings for this book. It says, actually in the beginning of this book here, it says, please note this book contains a storyline that some may find triggering, which I appreciate that the author put in there. So if you think you need a trigger warning before reading this book, either ask me or look it up somewhere else if you want to know the exact details of it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This was quite a powerful read. This book is about two women. So in 1988, the two women, they were girls at the time. They were 8 years old. They have almost identical names, and they both really love ballet. I think that's how you say that in English, because in Dutch we say ballet. And they both want to be professional ballet dancers. They seem like they're going to be best friends. And then years later, as women, they both have very different lives. And so we follow both of them, and we also follow, like, for example, chapter 1. It doesn't actually say a 1, that's my bad. So the first chapter after the prologue, it says here Nika. So that's one of the two women. You learn in the prologue. So they have very similar names, but they are each given a nickname. They have a nickname that they use. So that's how we can distinguish them. So the first bit is 2016. So that's the nowadays timeline. And then, so for example, here you have 1999, which is a past timeline. So a lot of the chapters take place in present tense, and then we also have parts that take place in the past tense of either character. And so we get to know also what happened to lead up to the present tense, if that makes sense. And yeah, this was a really powerful, good read. Definitely some hard-hitting topics in here, but yeah, I really like this one. I gave it 10 out of 10, all 5 stars. I really enjoyed the writing style. It made me want to keep on reading. And sometimes I needed to specifically put this book down and let my brain process some of the stuff that happened in this book because of the sort of hard-hittingness, and also probably because of the way how my brain works. So yeah, in short, this was great. So here's the synopsis on the back. This was another great book. And then we get to the last book that I read in June, and I only just finished this at the end of June. This is Fallen Dragon by Peter F. Hamilton. This was a reread for me. It is one of his books that I hadn't reread yet, and I've been wanting to reread this one for a while. Interestingly, so the first time I read this book, and I don't know when that was because it was a long time ago, I was in a reading slump at the time, and I was having such trouble reading anything, and in the end, this was like the only book that appealed to me, and I read this and it got me out of the slump. So, I will say this book is not for everyone. So this is like epic science fiction. This is a standalone. Most of his books are part of series, but this one is a standalone. It is quite long. I don't know if you can tell, but it is 808 pages, my edition. Although I think nowadays this edition is not sold anymore. Sad face, because I love this. But yeah, he is not an author for everyone. I mean, not many authors are, to be fair. But yeah, I feel like I should just say that. That I really like his work when I'm in the mood for it. He talks about like the science bits in quite a bit of detail, and also things like describing certain planets or environment. And I haven't told you yet what it's about. Here's the synopsis on the back. So this is like what I would call hard science fiction, as opposed to like soft science fiction. So like that's not for everyone. That's if you're not that much into science fiction, I think you would be better off reading some other science fiction books rather than Peter Pan. Some of his books can be called like space opera, and I like that kind of stuff when I'm in a mood for it. But yeah, definitely not for everyone. I would say that this book is geared towards white heterosexual males. Abled white heterosexual neurotypical males. Anyway, this book follows a couple of characters, although our main character really is called Lawrence. And the chapters, which are quite long, kind of alternate between now and the past. That's kind of a theme for the last few books, I feel. There's been several books this month that I read that have past and present timelines. So we have some chapters in like the present, what is considered the present day in the book, and some chapters we see Lawrence's past, and we get to figure out how things led up to this and stuff. In the nowadays chapters, we also follow some other characters, for example, Denise and Simon. Well, here's a synopsis on the back. I have previously really enjoyed this author's work. This was a reread for me, so I really enjoyed rereading this. But again, not an author for everyone. Just want to say that in case, because I've had it happen, not with this author, but with other books that I was like really enthusiastic about them, and then my friend didn't like them and he didn't want to be my friend anymore. Anyway, so because of that, I am a bit more moderate in, I wouldn't recommend this book to absolutely everyone. I prefer to think about it on a per person basis if I think that person would like it, if that makes sense, because I don't want to lose any more friends. So anyway, that was years ago, but I have not forgotten. So there's definitely some action scenes in this, and also some more like character moments. So Lawrence in this book goes through quite a bit of a like character arc, character growth, and then you find out also what happened in his past, which makes sense how he is like now and stuff like that. Oh yeah, and that's, I did want to point that out, because the book contains a few times words that like nowadays some of us would rather not see in books. This is an older book, but not like, oh no, 2001. So 20 years ago at this point. Wow, we are in 2022. But yeah, I just wanted to point it out because I know there are some people who, so it's not the N word, but there are, and I've written it down so I can probably tell you, there is 3 times the R word, 1 time, yeah, I don't know if people call this the M word, but I also am reluctant to say it in case it does offend anyone. A few times the word freak, but that's not the F word because that's a different word. But I just thought I'd write that down in case that is important for anyone, which is why I said that I think the target audience for this is white, heterosexual, not typical male. So, although, interestingly, as a rare among the ones that I've read, this does actually mention some same-sex relationship, like, but that's only a small mention in the book. This book has some interesting themes, and yeah, but I enjoyed rereading it. And I also, my battery is dying. I also really enjoyed how everything came together at the end, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, I need to wrap this up because my battery is dying. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like and comment if you want to, and I hope to see you in my next one. Have a nice day. Bye!